Your person was introduced to someone new for marriage. Then a secret recording of you was played. My beloved child. Your person walked into that room believing they were about to meet someone their family considered perfect for marriage. Everything had been arranged carefully, the introductions, the polite smiles, even the questions everyone expected them to answer. But there was one problem nobody in that room fully understood. Their heart was somewhere else. It was still connected to you. And just when your person thought they could survive the evening by staying quiet, someone reached for a phone and said, "Before we continue, there's something you need to hear." Your person immediately noticed the strange change in everyone's faces. The person sitting across from them stopped smiling. A family member looked toward the door. Then the recording began, and within seconds, your person recognized the voice coming through the speaker. It was yours. But here is where things became unsettling. This wasn't a recording your person remembered receiving from you. It sounded private, emotional, almost as though you had spoken without knowing anyone else would ever hear it. Your person leaned forward, completely forgetting about the marriage introduction happening around them. There was something in your voice that struck them harder than anyone expected. You weren't begging. You weren't trying to convince anyone of anything. You were speaking from a place of honesty, and one particular sentence made your person's expression change instantly. Someone in the room noticed and quietly asked, "You still care about them, don't you?" Your person didn't answer. They couldn't. Because suddenly the question was no longer whether this new person might be suitable for marriage. The real question was much more dangerous: who had secretly recorded you, and why had they chosen this exact moment to play it? Don't skip, because what happened next changed the entire atmosphere. Your person finally asked for the phone, but whoever was holding it refused to hand it over. Instead, they said there was more on the recording, something your person needed to hear before making any decision about marriage. That was when the person who had been introduced to them quietly realized they had walked into a story that began long before they arrived. Your person's hands tightened beneath the table. They had spent so much time trying to understand your silence, wondering whether you had forgotten them, whether everything between you had meant less to you than it did to them. But this recording was beginning to suggest the exact opposite. And just before the most important section played, someone suddenly tried to stop it, saying, "That part wasn't supposed to be heard." Your person looked directly at them and said, "Play it." Because whatever came next was about to reveal not only what you had secretly felt, but who had been keeping the truth away from both of you. The room became so quiet that your person could hear the faint sound of someone breathing across the table. Then the recording continued. Your voice came through softer this time, and what you said made your person freeze. You admitted that walking away had never been what you truly wanted. You had believed distance was necessary because someone had convinced you that your presence was making their life harder. Your person slowly looked toward the family members sitting nearby. Suddenly, the uncomfortable expressions around that table made sense. Someone had spoken to you. Someone had made you believe that disappearing was an act of love. But your person had been told a completely different story, that you had simply chosen to leave. Then another voice appeared on the recording. It was faint at first, almost impossible to recognize, but your person immediately asked for the volume to be raised. The person introduced for marriage looked confused while everyone else seemed strangely nervous. Stay till the end, because this was no accidental recording. Someone had apparently saved it because they knew the truth might eventually be needed. Your voice asked one heartbreaking question: are you absolutely sure they'll be happier if I stay away? And then came the answer from the other voice. Your person recognized it. Their face changed instantly. They stood up from the table and stared at someone they had trusted for years, realizing that the separation between you may never have been entirely your decision. But before your person could demand an explanation, the recording revealed something even more unexpected. You had asked the mysterious person to deliver one final message if your person ever decided to marry somebody else. That message had never reached them. Until tonight. Your person sat back down, no longer interested in the introduction, the carefully planned future, or anyone's approval. They wanted only to hear what you had said. The recording paused for several seconds, and your person whispered, "Keep playing." Then your voice returned with words that made the stranger across the table quietly lower their eyes. "If they truly love someone else, I'll never interfere. But if there's still something in their heart for me, tell them what really happened that night." And suddenly, everyone realized the recording was about to expose a second secret, one your person had never known existed. Your person didn't move as the recording carried your voice back to that night, the night everything between you seemed to change without explanation. You revealed that you had been preparing to tell them something important, something that might have brought the two of you closer instead of pushing you apart. But before you could speak, a message reached you from someone your person trusted. It claimed your person had already made a decision about their future, and that continuing to hold on would only embarrass both of you. Your voice trembled slightly as you admitted you believed it. Not because you stopped caring, but because you cared enough to step aside. Across the table, your person slowly turned toward the individual whose voice had appeared earlier on the recording. "Did you send that message?" they asked. No answer came. That silence became an answer of its own. The person introduced for marriage quietly pushed their chair back, sensing this meeting had become something entirely different. Your person wasn't comparing two possible relationships anymore. They were discovering that the story they had believed about you might have been carefully constructed. Then another detail surfaced. In the recording, you mentioned receiving proof, something that appeared to show your person moving forward without you. But your person immediately knew something was wrong. They had never created what you described. What proof? They demanded. Someone tried to dismiss the question, but your person refused to let it disappear. Because if someone had deliberately shown you something false, then your silence, your distance, and perhaps months of misunderstanding had been built around a lie. And then came the detail nobody expected. Your recorded voice explained that you had kept the original message and the supposed proof because something about them never felt completely right. You had noticed a tiny inconsistency, a date that didn't match what your person had previously told you. At the time, you ignored it because you were emotionally overwhelmed. Now your person remembered that date too, and their expression suddenly changed. Something huge was waiting inside that clue. They reached for the phone again and said, "Go back. Play that part one more time." This time nobody resisted. The date was repeated clearly, and your person immediately understood why it was impossible. They looked across the room at the person who had been avoiding their eyes and asked one chilling question: "How could you have sent this to them on that date, when I hadn't even told anyone about my decision yet?" And the response they received opened an entirely new mystery. The person across the room finally spoke, but their explanation only made things worse. They claimed they had been trying to protect your person from uncertainty, insisting they could see where everything was heading before anyone else could. But your person caught the contradiction immediately. How could someone protect them by sending you information that wasn't even true yet? Then the recording resumed, and your voice revealed another detail. After receiving that message, you tried to contact your person one final time. You wrote something simple, asking for one honest conversation before disappearing from their life. But your person stared at the phone in disbelief. They had never received that message. Not once. And suddenly, this wasn't just about misleading you. Someone had somehow made sure your final attempt to reach them never changed what happened next. Your person turned toward the individual who had arranged tonight's marriage introduction. "Did you know about this?" they asked. The question landed hard. Nobody answered immediately, but the person introduced to them did something unexpected. They stood up and said they deserved the truth too. They hadn't come there to become part of someone else's unfinished love story. That simple statement shifted everything. Your person apologized, then admitted something they had been hiding from everyone in that room. They had agreed to this introduction because they were trying to convince themselves that you were truly gone. They thought meeting someone new might finally silence the questions they still carried about you. Instead, your secret recording had proven those questions existed for a reason. Then the recording reached a section nobody seemed prepared for. Your voice became quieter as you described what happened after your final message went unanswered. You said you had almost accepted that your person wanted nothing more to do with you. Until someone contacted you weeks later with information that made you question everything. Your person leaned closer to the phone. Who contacted them? They demanded. The recording answered indirectly. You mentioned a person who had witnessed a conversation and believed you deserved to know what was really being planned behind your back. Then you said something that made your person's face lose all color. "That's when I learned the marriage introduction wasn't a recent idea. Someone had been preparing it while we were still talking." Your person slowly looked around the table, realizing tonight had not begun when they walked into that room. The plan had started much earlier, and the recording was about to reveal exactly who started it. The next few seconds changed the meaning of everything your person had heard. Your voice revealed that the witness had overheard two people discussing how to make your connection appear impossible without openly demanding that either of you walk away. One person would convince you that your person had chosen a different future. The other would keep telling your person that you had lost interest and moved on. Neither of you would be given enough truth to confront the other. Your person's eyes moved slowly around the room as they realized how perfectly that strategy matched what had happened. Then your voice mentioned one recognizable detail about the conversation, and someone at the table suddenly stood up, insisting the recording should be stopped. Your person refused. "Nobody touches that phone," they said, their voice calmer now, but stronger than before. The recording continued, and you explained why you had never exposed what you discovered. You didn't have enough proof. You feared that confronting everyone would make you look desperate, especially if your person truly had decided to move forward. So you waited, hoping they would eventually reach out on their own. But then you learned about tonight's marriage introduction. That was when you recorded everything you remembered and entrusted it to someone with one instruction: only play it if your person appeared ready to make a permanent decision without knowing the truth. Suddenly, everyone understood why the recording had surfaced tonight. But the biggest shock was still hidden. Your voice said the witness had given you one piece of evidence that could prove the entire plan: a screenshot of a conversation sent before your separation. Your person immediately asked where it was. The person holding the phone hesitated, then opened another file attached to the recording. There it was. A short exchange discussing the exact date your person would supposedly be introduced to someone more suitable. But tonight's date was months later. Your person stared at the screen, confused, until they noticed the original planned date. It was from the same week you had suddenly disappeared. And beneath it was a message from an unnamed contact saying, "First we need to make sure those two stop speaking." Your person looked up sharply because they recognized the profile picture beside that message, even though the sender's name had been erased. Your person stared at that tiny profile picture as an old memory rushed back. They had seen it countless times beside messages from someone they trusted deeply, someone who had repeatedly claimed they wanted nothing but happiness for them. When your person quietly said the name aloud, the atmosphere shifted. The person they identified immediately denied everything, arguing that profile pictures could be copied and screenshots could be manipulated. For 1 second, doubt entered the room. Then your recording provided a detail nobody could dismiss. You explained that the witness had saved more than a screenshot. There was also a short voice note connected to the conversation, and the voice inside it belonged to the same person now insisting they had never interfered. The voice note began. It didn't contain some dramatic confession. That made it even more believable. Instead, it contained ordinary instructions about timing, when someone should contact you, what you should be told, and why your person must never know the conversation happened. Your person listened without interrupting, their disappointment becoming heavier with every sentence. Then came one line that changed everything: once they believe it's over, the marriage conversation can begin naturally. The person introduced for marriage looked stunned. They turned toward your person and quietly said, "I didn't know any of this." Your person believed them. This stranger hadn't created the situation. They had simply been brought into a plan that began long before tonight. But your person still had one question that mattered more than exposing whoever had interfered: where were you now, and did you still believe the lie? They asked the person holding the recording whether you knew it had finally been played. The answer was no. You had left the decision entirely in someone else's hands because you refused to disrupt your person's future unless the truth became necessary. That answer hit your person harder than anything else. After everything, you still hadn't tried to force yourself back into their life. Then the final seconds of this section of the recording began, and your voice said, "There's one thing I never told them because I was afraid it was already too late." Your person leaned toward the speaker, barely breathing. But before your secret could be revealed, the recording abruptly stopped, and a notification appeared on the phone from a contact nobody expected to see. The notification carried your name. For several seconds, nobody touched the phone. Your person stared at the screen as if even breathing might make the message disappear. The timing felt impossible. You had no idea the recording was being played tonight, or at least that was what everyone believed. Then the person holding the phone opened your message. It contained only one sentence: "Please don't play the last recording unless they ask for the truth themselves." Your person's eyes widened. There was another recording. More importantly, you had known there was a possibility this moment would come, yet you had still given them a choice. Without hesitation, your person looked directly at the phone and said, "I'm asking. Play it." This recording sounded different. Your voice was calmer, but the emotion underneath it was unmistakable. You explained that the one thing you had never told your person wasn't about the people who separated you. It was about what you had planned before everything fell apart. You had been preparing to ask whether the two of you could stop living in uncertainty and finally build something real together. You had even written down what you wanted to say because you were afraid nerves would make you forget. But the false message arrived first. You believed your answer had already been given before you ever asked the question. Your person covered their mouth, suddenly realizing how close the two of you had been to choosing each other at the exact moment someone pushed you apart. Then your voice revealed one final detail that nobody in the room saw coming. You still had the words you had written that night. You had never thrown them away. And you said that if your person ever heard this recording and still felt something for you, they shouldn't make a decision based on guilt, anger, or what others had done. They should make it based only on what remained between the two of you. Your person stood up immediately. The marriage introduction was over. The arguments around the table no longer mattered. They asked for your number, but before anyone could give it to them, the phone rang. Your name appeared across the screen again. This time it wasn't a message. You were calling, and your person had only seconds to decide whether they were ready to answer and finally hear your voice directly. Your person reached for the phone, but their hand stopped just inches from the screen. After everything they had discovered, answering you suddenly felt bigger than any decision they had made that night. Then the ringing stopped. For one painful second, your person thought the opportunity had vanished. But almost immediately, a voice message arrived from you. Nobody dared touch the phone until your person quietly pressed play. Your voice filled the room again, except this time there was no old secret attached to it. This message had been recorded only moments ago. You said you had learned the recording was finally being played, and you needed your person to understand something before they came looking for you. You weren't asking them to choose you simply because someone had manipulated the past. That distinction shook your person. You explained that the truth could expose what happened, but it could not automatically repair everything that had been lost. If your person wanted to speak with you, it had to be because they genuinely wanted that conversation, not because they felt betrayed by their family, uncomfortable about the marriage introduction, or guilty about what you had endured. The stranger who had been introduced to them quietly nodded, almost as if they respected you without ever meeting you. Your person did too. Then they finally admitted aloud what everyone had been avoiding: "I wanted to contact them before tonight. I just thought they didn't want me anymore." And with that sentence, the last excuse disappeared. Your person took their own phone from their pocket and searched for the number they had never managed to delete. But before they called, another message from you appeared. This one contained a photograph of the handwritten words you had prepared months earlier. The words you intended to say before the false message changed everything. Your person opened the image and read silently. Their eyes stopped on one sentence near the bottom: "I don't need prom."